what is the intent of the conversation is just as important as what is the content of the conversation. Because when you are thinking with intent in mind, you hopefully are going to be sharper on the words that you use and making sure that you're not accusatory in that, and that you're opening that dialogue up.
Welcome to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, where we get inside the minds of leaders to harvest great ideas and lessons that help you grow as a difference maker in food and agriculture. I'm your host and curiosity captain, Nicole Ursig. Today, we're cracking open a conversation about crucial conversations, those high stakes, high emotion moments that can either strengthen or strain relationships. Today's guest is Ashley Collins, the CEO of the North Carolina Peanut Growers Association. Her world is full of passionate voices, competing priorities, and plenty of people who care deeply about the outcome, which means she doesn't just talk about crucial conversations, she has them every day. Ashley, welcome to the pod.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
We're so glad you're here because one of the things I also missed from your bio is your connection to AFA, and you are an alumni of working there. So
I am an alumni of working there, and I think that, I hate that I didn't get that experience during undergrad, but I certainly got my cup filled being on staff at AFA, and I'm always so happy to meet students who did get that opportunity and go through the program. It's a phenomenal stepping stone in your college career.
Okay, so outside of, I explained your job today a little bit, but what did I miss from your bio, or what wouldn't people know about you if they just looked you up on LinkedIn?
Well, I will say I've been married for 17 years. My husband is also in the agricultural industry. He's in cotton. And if you're listening today and you know anything about peanuts, you know cotton and peanuts go together. They're a very strong rotational partners. He is the state cotton specialist here in North Carolina. So he's more on the research side of the industry, whereas I'm a little bit more on the people side, but we both work with people. But to the topic of, I also share that because when we're talking about having critical conversations and authentic conversations with people, it certainly plays into your personal life and your married life just as much as it does your work life.
Yes, your partner gets to hear about everything, all the crucial conversations that you get to have every day.
Yes, it's practice, every day.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes too, I feel like if you can get good at those crucial conversations in your marriage or in your relationship, it can benefit in both areas of life, right? Like your personal life and your professional life.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So before we dive in, give me a little bit of a scope of what your job looks like and what the Peanut Growers Association does in North Carolina.
Sure. Well, and this is what I love talking about, the peanut industry. I've been in this position for a little over 4 years and am often accused of being quite excited and energetic about the peanut industry. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about that for a second. North Carolina ranks third in the nation in the production of peanuts. And we are the number one producer of the ballpark peanuts. So if you go to a Major League Baseball game and crack open an in-shell roasted peanut, it's very likely that came out of the dirt right here in North Carolina. So in my position, I work for the approximately 650 different peanut growers that are in our state. We produce peanuts in over 30 different counties, which is about a third of North Carolina. And I report directly to a board of 27, an executive committee of 9 that I work with most regularly. But I tell people I wear 3 different hats in that position. One of those is just general promotion. So making sure that the public knows that we grow peanuts in North Carolina, that they're nutritious and flavorful, and that they grow under the ground. A lot of people don't realize that. And just educating about general peanut production to the consumer. We do a little bit of recipes and sharing with people how to utilize them and the nutritional benefits. I also do some promotion or education to growers, making sure that they're up to date on what's happening in the industry and how they can be sustainable as a producer. And then the second hat I wear is research. So a lot of people may not realize that peanuts are publicly bred. So when you think about corn and beans and cotton, that breeding takes place at the corporate level. at one of the larger entities that many of us know people, or maybe some of you work with. But peanuts are publicly bred at the university level. And so we fund the research at our land grant university to help continue to develop the powerful peanut that goes in the ground for the future, as well as other agronomic practices to help growers be successful in producing their crop. So that's the research hat. And then the third hat is advocacy, which is the term that I use to describe the work we do in the political realm. So some of that happens at the state level, but primarily at the federal level, advocating for farmer programs that help these guys stay in business and making sure that those who are elected to represent the growers, that they understand the profession and appreciate it.
That's amazing. I love your passion for peanuts. I now have a fun fact with the ballpark peanut. And before we hopped on, I was sharing, I had never seen how peanuts were grown. And so I know there's a lot of fellow ag nerds listening, and it is a very cool crop to see growing, to see harvested. It's different. And it's awesome to hear your passion for it too, Ashley.
It is. It is. It's so cool to when people understand. That's like the highlight of my day a lot of days, when I meet somebody who is not familiar with the production practice of digging peanuts, flipping them, letting them sit on top of the ground for a couple days, and then coming back through with a different piece of machinery to harvest them, because they're just fascinated. And another thing about our growers is, if you get into growing peanuts, you're committed, because like a couple other crops that are out there, the equipment you use in peanut production is specific to peanuts, and that's it. So I love working with the guys the farmers that I work for, because they are so committed to the crop as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a cool crop, honestly. So if anyone wants to go down a deep dive on peanuts, I could spend this entire podcast probably just learning from Ashley. But we want to talk about crucial conversations that can help in leadership conversations too, Ashley. So this is something you have spent a little bit of time studying and obviously putting into practice. But before we dive into like how you've applied it, tell me, was there a moment that you realized like, hey, I need to strengthen this skill for my own leadership journey or my own professional growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I would attribute that a lot to my experience working with AFA. The time that I came to work with the organization was right kind of when we began to see in our industry, luckily, a larger commitment to DEI and inclusivity, and having crucial conversations across the board. And I was working with the student leaders in the role that I had when I was with AFA, and not only were we engaged, we were doing some of the training on emotional intelligence and different aspects that we were, the IDI assessment. That was when we first started offering that for student leaders, and I'm not sure if they even still do that. But so that was creating a lot of dialogue amongst the student leaders, and then from the student leaders to the other students that we were bringing to AFA experiences. And so as the person working with those students, I wanted to get more equipped myself, but then also learn how to equip those student leaders. And, just having gone through a career prior to coming to AFA and having performance reviews, and some of those not being the best, then wanting to be able to improve myself, and then also get good at having those conversations in the future.
How would you describe one of these high stakes conversations that maybe take an extra set of muscles to get through effectively?
Well, I think that they happen naturally sometimes. They're not, sometimes we find ourselves in high stakes conversations, and we don't really have the time to think through, is this a high stakes conversation? But, the part of the background that I have in doing this work and some of the research around it is, when stakes are high, or whenever, there are competing opinions that people have, but you need to find a common goal in order to kind of move away from that conversation. You need to find some common values that you and the other person may have. But anytime that the stakes are high in that dialogue, that there is something at risk, whether that's your relationship with that person or the performance of that person or a decision that's going to be made, and you know that you've got two different opinions coming into the conversation, and it's very likely that emotions could get wrapped up in how you present yourself, which is, the comment about emotions. I would say that's probably another reason that I knew that I needed to, or that I had a desire to do some of this work. I am one of those people who shows it on my face before I say it. And I've always known that about myself. I own it at this point in my life of mid-career or later career. But, that was a common, especially in my early days, my first career. I got feedback about that. And so sometimes while there's no emotion in my tone, there's emotion on my face, right? And a lot of us find ourselves in that type of dialogue. And it's something that, I'll be honest, I'm 42. I've worked on it for 20 plus years, but having your words that you choose to use in that conversation can sometimes help with what you're showing on your face.
Oh yeah. Body language is such a key piece of it. Uh, I maybe don't show it on my face, but I'm the opposite. It shows up in my tone for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
as I think about those conversations, for me, anytime I am in a conversation like that, it's more of a, I know the stakes are high because in my gut, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, listen. And you're right. I love that you described sometimes you don't know it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you're going into like you're having a hard conversation with a person that's reporting to you or your own boss or even a friend. But I love that you described that sometimes they just you don't realize you don't realize one's coming until you're in it. And those can, I think, maybe even be the hardest because you haven't had time to think about what you want to say or how you want to react.
Yep. And that's where the practice and the just being reflective on what you've listened to today or what you've read or what you've seen on social, and just having it front of mind is going to help you to be a better communicator in those moments.
Yeah. Was there a moment early in your career where you avoided a hard conversation and realized it changed the course of something, either for better or worse?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's multiple, not just one specific, but when you ask me that question, a particular scenario like comes to mind right off the bat. And this was in the first career that I was in. And we had a really strong team of people, and there's all kind of research out there about how your coworkers are what makes your experience at a particular employer, right? Like people sometimes will be frustrated with their role or their task and responsibilities, but they love the team. And that's 100%. I loved what I did in my first career, which was with agcareers.com. But we had a team of people that we really synced very well. And I miss working with those people even now. But because of that, we a lot of times would defend one another in employment, in scenarios. And I think there was a time where a coworker was in a scenario, and I felt I wanted to defend them and come and and that was a critical conversation with me where I know that I showed the emotion more so outwardly, and I could have done better with my words. And I think about, that was a pivotal moment in my career. It's being very vulnerable in this conversation, it led to some, really deep performance conversations with my manager at the time. And so I often, when I'm talking about having these type of conversations, I think about that moment. And very glad that, worked through it and got through the other side. But knowing what I know now, would I have handled that situation differently? Absolutely.
Thank you for the vulnerability, Ashley. I want to dive a little bit deeper here just for a second because you were willing to have the conversation and express yourself, but obviously there were some unintended consequences of it. Well, I'm curious your thoughts. Like, is it worth it to express yourself and learn through the process? Like, obviously, you look back and would reflect on it differently, but I think a lot of people are, I'll speak for myself. And early in my career, I was so afraid to make the mistake. And so I avoided some of these conversations. And curious your thoughts on that of, what we're going to make mistakes in our career, and how do you choose when to speak up even if you might say something wrong?
Yeah. I think I'm just naturally, and some of this might be being Southern. Sometimes I think about what my grandmother would say to me when I was little, because I was known to talk a lot. So I have the opposite problem that you did, or scenario of what you're describing. I was quicker to talk, even earlier in my career. Opinionated would probably be a word that I would share with that. But I do think that a lot of times people are more timid in those scenarios. And I think it's where I think reflection, gosh, at this point in my career, I am so much more reflective than I was in my 20s or 30s. And taking that time for the pause and to reflect and to plan a conversation. You, of course, don't want the moment to get away from you. I think that's important. And that's something that, these critical conversations that we're talking about today are things that typically, I think, some of your questions are going to lean more towards opportunity to plan for that conversation. And there's a great resource if you've read the book Crucial Conversations, there's a worksheet in there for planning out when you've preparing to go into a conversation. And I think doing that, when you can, makes you stronger for the ad hoc moments that happen. And that creates reflection, right? And taking that time to think. Certainly, I think to your question, the importance of taking the time to pause. I used to do a lot of interview training, and we're not talking about interviews today. I know you guys have some great dialogues about those, but that was really what I cut my teeth on in the agricultural world, was doing a lot of trainings with college students on interviewing skills and whatnot. And I very often would tell students, it's okay to take a breath and to think. You will not regret it. I mean, let's not take a 5-minute break here, but just having that moment. And I will probably do it today in our conversation of it. Sometimes there's power in silence.
Oh, completely, completely. I think there's power in silence both for yourself, but also for the other person in the conversation. I found sometimes like being scared of silence, I totally I can empathize with that. And also, I in my former career, I did a lot of interviewing for like videos and stuff like that, and I realized sometimes I just needed to shut up, and that would create the best answer on the other side. Um, and I think that goes to some of these crucial conversations, even planning it out, right? There's planning what you're going to say, but Ashley, do you also prepare for what the other person might say or even might need to tell you?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, again, that goes to taking the time to prepare and reflect and think through, gosh, we're not that other person. So we're never going to be 100% aware of what they're going to say, but thinking in front of them. And, and this is where taking that time to prepare, I think a lot of people maybe listening to this today are thinking maybe about performance reviews. That's where I think, and giving feedback, that's where I think some of these conversations happen the most. And we've seen a shift in the career world. Whereas when I was coming through, performance reviews were very time oriented and on a schedule. The generation that I even find myself working with now, they want feedback in the moment. And that's fair. Like I am trying more with those people who work on my team to be good at giving it in the moment. But when you do that, you have to be prepared for the dialogue that you're going to. And I think about the old world, and a lot of employers probably still do very structured 3, 6, 12-month performance reviews. But if you're going to be giving that ad hoc feedback or looking to correct an action in the workplace, before entering into that dialogue, thinking through what that other person, knowing their personality, what may be going through their mind, and also encouraging them to take time to think before they respond. That's part of kind of structuring that crucial conversation that you're in, is giving that person some permission or making them comfortable. I mean, that's one of the very first things when you read Crucial Conversations. A topic in there is about making it safe, making the environment safe to even have the conversation, and encouraging safety throughout. And that is telling the person, hey, it's okay if you need to take a moment while we're in this. And then, your mind may even go to some, additional scenarios of what they may respond to you with.
Yeah, I love that you bring up that psychological safety, because that is something that starts way before you ever have a crucial conversation with someone. Is like, are you someone that's going to be super reactive or expressive in a negative way? Or how have they seen you react in these scenarios before? Like that is something, as we talk about preparing, especially if you're in a leadership role, like that starts way before you ever have a hard conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. What is the intent of the conversation is just as important as what is the content of the conversation. And, because when you are thinking with intent in mind, you hopefully are going to be sharper on the words that you use, and making sure that you're not um, accusatory in that, and that you're opening that dialogue up.
Yeah. And when you express positive intent, it allows you to talk about what the actual problem maybe is that you're trying to address. It takes the stakes down a little bit on the interpersonal relational side of things. It speaking with intent to me almost provides like some guardrails for that relationship.
Absolutely. One of the things that I try to remind myself of, because I think everything we're talking about today is an ongoing learning, like lifelong learning,
Amen. Yeah.
lifelong practice, right? But sometimes I will even say to the person, because especially if I feel that we're maybe getting away from that intent and the dialogue is not safe, to use those terms, like, what are you hearing me say? So that you hear it from their perspective, and then you have an opportunity to redirect if that is what's happening. And that's, I think asking questions is a huge part of having a crucial conversation and keeping that dialogue open. But there are times where you can read from body language or from tone and say to that person, because maybe they're in a totally different field than you are, in their mind. So just saying to them, you know, what what are you hearing me say, and see how they verbalize it back to you.
Oh, that is so. I'm going to take that one, put it in my pocket, Ashley, because I feel like a lot of times I am very guilty of asking, like, does that make sense? And that almost
Mm,
is condescending when you're having a
absolutely. Yeah.
versus what are you hearing me say? And you can flip that around too, because in conversations, what I have done before too is, here's what I just heard. And then
Yeah.
it plays it back to them as well. And it helps just get so much more clear on the
Yeah.
conversation as well.
Absolutely.
So tell me, if someone is listening to this, they're about to go into a high stakes conversation. Maybe it's a conversation with their boss, or they're a team leader that's about to have a hard performance review. What tips do you have for preparing for that conversation?
I think that I'm not going to say scripting it out, like, but there is so much power in, let's call it journaling or outlining, making some notes on paper prior to going into the conversation, so that if those emotions get high, if the stakes, if safety gets out of bounds, you've got a visual to go to for some notes about that. And also, I think especially if you're talking about a behavior, or even something that has created emotion for you as and that's why you're entering into this dialogue, having that written out is so helpful for you. These are your personal notes, having something And I mean, I'm still a pen and paper. I mean, I use a Remarkable, so I've at least, but like I'm not typing this out. I think there's power in the handwriting, and I know there's studies out there about that too. But I think that is very important. I think selecting, you want to talk about preparation, picking the right time, right? Like obviously not at 10 minutes till 5 on a Friday, right? Like
Panic that just even went through. Yeah, no.
I think some people maybe put it off because it is a high stakes conversation, right? And you're like, oh, if I do it in the last 10 minutes, on a Friday. And that seems like a duh, but one thing I have also learned is never think that there's a duh. Like there's always someone who needs a reminder of what may be common sense to you, right? So picking the opportunity, like maybe it's in the car. I spend a lot of time with my team that I have now. We travel across the state to a variety of meetings and events. And so you have some intimate time in the car together. Is that the right time to have those conversations? Now, of course, if you're driving, you're not able to review notes and things, but learning the personality of the person and picking sometimes you need to prepare to go off site, right? Like to go to a coffee
I was
shop.
gonna say go to lunch or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Go do something, like be somewhere where you again are making that environment safe for preparation. And then going into the conversation with what is the desired outcome? What is the action, or what is the behavioral change, or how are you going to track accountability of change, or whatever that may be? Like what, no, don't just enter into a conversation without having some type of, okay, what does conclusion look like?
Ooh, know what the outcome you want out of it, right? Okay.
Right. And maybe it doesn't happen in that dialogue. Maybe it happens 3 weeks later when you check in again, or maybe it's the next event or experience that you're wrapped up in, or the next time that person is engaging with a client. I mean, but just have some type of concept of what that success or checkpoint is going to look like.
Yeah, so important. Ashley, when you have had crucial conversations, is it typically like there is one conversation that opens up an ongoing conversation, or is it a one and done?
Oh no, it's ongoing. I feel like, especially if we're talking about in the workplace or in your personal relationships, it is always ongoing. This is something that I don't truly feel like anyone ever reaches like mastery level. There are certainly people who are better at dialogue, better at having crucial conversations or critical dialogues. I think about lawyers a lot, right? Like they're really good at it. Politicians are pretty good at it too, but I think it is always ongoing, and the scenarios are always so different, right? Like, I mean, it's, I highly doubt two people have the exact same. It's like a snowflake, right? Like everything it's different for everybody.
Yes. I love that description of it. It makes it feel more beautiful than sometimes they
Yeah.
feel.
Yes.
Uh, what tips do you have, Ashley, if maybe I'm caught off guard by a high stakes conversation? Either I receive feedback I wasn't expecting, or someone sits me down and I think we are genuinely going out to lunch, and all of a sudden it's completely taken a turn. What advice do you have for how to react or how to prepare yourself to show up in moments like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple different pieces of advice, and depending upon the scenario, they could all play out. If you want to continue that dialogue right then, I think asking questions is so powerful. I think my favorite term that I have just ingrained in myself is, can you help me understand? Can you help me understand, whatever you've been presented with, like, can you help me understand why you feel that way? Can you give me examples? Like, questions are so powerful. That's one way that you can, I think, just asking questions back. Now, not the entire dialogue. At some point, you're going to get into the point of the conversation where you need to share your own facts or tell your story. But in that time, asking the questions are going to help you do that if you're in a caught off guard scenario. I also think saying to the person, can we have this conversation this afternoon? Can we have if you feel that goes back to the safety part of it, right? Asking, is there a better time to have that conversation? You don't want to put it off. You're not going to ask for months or weeks, right? But just to give yourself a moment to kind of be more prepared. And then again, I'll just say again, taking the moment to think through, to think before you speak. Because when you rush to something, that's when that emotion is really going to bubble up. Just naturally, that's, I think they call it in crucial conversations, the reptilian brain that comes,
Oh, yeah, the lizard
the
brain that
lizard.
just,
Yeah.
like, immediately reacts,
Yes.
yeah.
And you can
We all have one.
yes. And they have a visual of it. And it is, I can see it. I can close my eyes and I can see the visual that the crucial conversations people use for reptilian brain. So, you want to avoid that. And so if you need to ask for that moment so that that doesn't happen. And a lot of this is just knowing yourself, right? And knowing how you're going to react. Again, I'm talking about being reflective of your own self, but that's so important.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And honestly, Ashley, it is something we hear the leaders on this podcast say again and again, that like the key to being a better leader and better at all of these hard soft, what we're going to say are soft skills, but they're very hard to do, is knowing yourself and how you're going to react and show up.
Yep. I always called those because this was kind of like my road show for a long time when I was traveling the country and going to college campuses. I would call them employability skills. The term was soft skills that was always used, but I'd say there's nothing soft about what we're talking about. These are the skills that I used to use a scenario of like being a MacGyver, but then college kids didn't know who MacGyver was. So maybe some of the listeners today know who MacGyver was as a character, but that's what made him so successful at getting out of all his conundrums was the soft skills or employability skills that he had.
Yeah, yeah. I think when we compare it to what I'm going to say is hard skills too, it helps contextualize the fact that you're not going to be good at this immediately, and that's okay. And you have to keep up the repetition because, like, goodness, the first time, if you think about any hobby you have, like the first time I started doing graphic design, I can look back and be like, that really sucked. Or the first time I like to hunt. So the first time I picked up a bow, like, was I hitting bullseye? Heck no. Like when you have, whether it's crucial conversations or how to be a good leader or a good manager, it takes being willing to be bad at it and do it anyway, and learn from that to get really good at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Public speaking. I mean, that's a huge example of that, right? Like, you don't just walk out there and command the whole stage, right? You have to practice.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips as we think about the intensity of these conversations and they can get hot and spicy for how you turn down the temperature?
Depending on the scenario you're coming at. If you're the person who has kicked off the conversation and is leading that, um, again, preparing ahead of time and knowing if you have the opportunity in the space to say to that person, let's take a minute. And again, that's okay. On the flip side of the dialogue, and I'm not saying like I'm not describing this as the leader and the follower because it should not be like that. It should be a dialogue of two people. So, but in the other case, if your emotions, if you're feeling that you're getting that way, um, again, knowing yourself and knowing that you need to take that moment, or repeating, right? So like going back and saying, describing your emotion in words, not letting it come out in tone and body language, but saying to that other person, when you say that, it makes me feel this. This is what I'm experiencing. Is that your intention? And asking that question. I've already mentioned just the power in asking questions is what keeps that dialogue going for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So part of the reason I asked that question is one of the things that has worked for me is validating what the other person has said. Like that's whether it's factually correct or yes, I see, like I can see that perspective. I've even said you're right. It doesn't change why we should, and that was more of in a business conversation of like you are absolutely right on the reason that we shouldn't do this, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep pushing forward. Like that is a risk we need to mitigate, not a reason not to do this.
And you do that because you know what the outcome is, right? Like that's why you're able to have that moment of admittance or reassurance, is because you know what goal it is you're working towards in that dialogue and you want to get there.
So one of the questions that sparked for me is how do you strike the balance between giving in some of that of, I mean, you should, how do you define your boundaries of this is what I'm willing to either, yes, I am a part of this problem or I do need to change versus I know there are some people out there, and I can say that I've been in this situation before where it's like, you know what, it would just be easier and get the outcome that I want if I just gave in. But that doesn't make the outcome for me good.
Right, right. This is something that I would say just honestly in the last like 5 years that I've become stronger in my career. And I think that's okay. Like, there's some things you just don't learn until you get older, till you've had more experience. But being able to admit that, and, I think about how many conversations, gosh, especially younger in my career, how rare it was that we just said, well, we're just going to have to, we're going to disagree on that. Like, can we agree to disagree on that particular point of the dialogue? And, when I think back to my early mid career time, I don't think I ever did that, and I'm at a point where I have had those dialogues more so, and just got to that point. And so maybe that's something that your listeners today will think about, and hearing that and say, gosh, when was the last time that we just agreed to disagree? And that's part of, just general maturity in your career. And but to also your question, I think one of the strategies is throughout the conversation, getting the buy-in from the other person about where you're trying to get to, and you do that through asking questions. Does that sound good? Are we still on the same path? And checking for that throughout. But sometimes just being open, and that's another thing that I would certainly describe of myself at this point in my career. I am much more understanding of people. I understand your perspective, whereas I feel like in early career we're so eager and we're trying to climb the ladder that we just want people to agree with our opinion and like us, and be, to get on your team, and to be working towards work because you're very convicted, and you feel like, oh, I've gone to college, I've gotten this internship, I've got my first promotion, like I know what I'm doing, right? But being understanding that what makes us successful is diversity of thought. And what makes, when you study successful businesses or successful teams, it is the diversity, not just in the makeup of the people, but the diversity of how they think. And so being understanding in that dialogue is a huge step in becoming better at communicating.
Yeah. And I think if I love that description of yourself early in your career because I could absolutely relate to where, like you think you know it, and to be on high performing teams and in high performing businesses and being able to have diversity of thought requires hard conversations because people think so differently. And you have to have humility that even though you're really smart and really talented, you're not the only really smart and really talented person in the room.
Yes, and not letting, you know, gosh, it's so much easier to give positive feedback, right? And so, we get a lot of that. Like I remember early in my career, people being, just getting so many compliments when I would do something or being, and I'm so grateful for that, like, because you need that confidence boost, but not letting it get in your mind whenever you're going into a crucial conversation with someone that you're right. That sometimes, I mean, depending upon, especially again, I'm thinking about performance reviews and trying to, you know, uh, coax behavior or outcomes in a job situation. You may be right, because you're maybe the boss or the manager and you need to correct some action. But depending on the dialogue, it may be just an opportunity to get some of that diversity of thought and having the willingness to say, like you mentioned earlier, you're right, or we're going to agree to disagree. Can we agree to disagree about that and just moving forward? But knowing yourself is so important.
Yes, yes. And to as you're talking about this, I'm reflecting of like some of my own experiences, both as a manager and as someone who's been led. And the leaders who come in with humility, I think have one, they're really good at that psychological safety and they just change the tone of the conversation. But I also have been on the other side of those where I've given feedback and then the person's response or the context that they provide to it totally changes my perspective as well. And I think you talked about asking questions. Curiosity is such a key piece of it. And if you go in with a closed mindset, I think the likelihood that you're going to get the outcome that you want is much more narrow and limited.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this as it relates to agriculture, because agriculture is built on legacy, tradition, relationships, family, which I think can make tough talks maybe even tougher. One, maybe why do you think that is? And is that something that how do we overcome that?
Yeah. Um, you know, I have had multiple times in the last just year or two where I've said in my mind to myself, it's the stories we tell ourselves, right? That's another key in crucial conversations. But I think I'm so encouraged by the future. You talk about family and legacy, right? And I think people listening know that absolutely we have some people, the older generations in agriculture who, gosh, bring so much value,
Yeah,
but
and wisdom.
wisdom, huge wisdom. But the concept of a crucial conversation was never in their repertoire, like so. And I feel like I have been so blessed to work with the upcoming generation who is listening to podcasts like this and who's going to trainings and doing that. So I think that is certainly going to make agriculture a better place. I am, while I don't think we've solved everything to be solved here, I'm so encouraged by the number of workshops and sessions that I see offered for the transition of the family farm. And because I know, while I've not engaged in one of those myself, I know that what one of the ways that you make the transition of the family farm happen is through practicing these crucial conversations. And maybe that is involving a third party mitigator, or like an ombudsman or someone in that dialogue. But, the generation before us didn't have those with their granddaddies. So I think that is very encouraging about agriculture. I think it's going to always be something that needs to be practiced and worked on and be front of mind, but I just cannot help but to think we're going to be in a better place. Also, the conversations around mental health in the agricultural industry. that I'm so encouraged that they're happening, because I've certainly seen that play out in operations in my 20-year career. And so just the fact that it's even a topic now is encouraging. Again, it's not going to fix the problem. I mean, it is a problem that needs to be addressed, but at least we're working on it. So I think those are some ways that it applies to agriculture. I guess to your question of just saying, like, I think we've got people in this industry who are more passionate about figuring this out, so that the stereotype of agriculture changes about having conversations.
Yes. Well, and I think one of the things you just highlighted, Ashley, is the key in all of this is vulnerability, and us being willing to be vulnerable and talk about hard things that are scary or just tough or carry emotion or all of it. And that is something that what we're talking about is the people in agriculture, and this is a shift in the culture of agriculture, and that doesn't happen easily, and it doesn't happen fast.
It doesn't. And so blessed to be a part of it at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens if farms, associations, companies, what if leaders avoid some of this truth tell? I'm going to go more into the truth telling, hard conversation piece of things, maybe more from a business standpoint.
I'm going to add a category to that: boards. Um, I have just in the last decade or so, certainly comes with natural career progression. Not only do I lead a board, I serve on a lot of boards. And especially when I came into the peanut industry, I began to experience those boards that were very almost scripted, right? Like there was a meeting before the meeting, and there might be a meeting after the meeting, but
And there's a text thread, but like the
yeah,
conversation in the room is
it's
not
not a
real.
dialogue, right? And again, I'm encouraged because I think that we're shifting that in our industry, but it's still out there for sure because I serve on some of those. So I think that is, from a business standpoint, not healthy. And if you step back and study, that is where you see conflict in organizations and associations, because the place where that dialogue should have happened at that board meeting, when you've got all that diversity of experience and thought at the table, isn't happening. It may take a long time for that to show in the financial performance of that organization or in the just the overall success of the business. People, like, I think about turnover of employees. I mean, it's not always about the dollar, right? It's about retention and the culture of the place that you work at, and your ability, that company's ability to be creative and to also shift when needed in the business, in the marketplace. And so I think that practicing some of the things that we're talking about today as a person who may serve on those, and being, one of my favorite sayings is be the change that you want to see in the world, right? Having that confidence because you've spent the time thinking through the dialogue, thinking through the words that you're going to choose, thinking through how other people, and speaking up in those opportunities in business is what is going to make that business stronger. So, that's kind of my answer to your question there about flipping it to like the business mindset. Is I feel like um I've really seen it play out in that board structure, right? So why do we have boards? And that could be everything from your college alumni board to, something more business centered, like what I'm doing every day working with farmers, if there's not dialogue, right? So being I hope those who are listening today who find themselves in that type of scenario in their career, if nothing else, get some confidence today of, you know what, I've been in a meeting like that and I need to drive that dialogue when I can.
Yes, such good advice, Ashley. And it's something I've seen play out in my career too, of where either I'm on the board or I'm serving the board, that the conversation in the room just isn't it's almost flat. And so love that you brought that up and a place where we can all practice. I'm even going to say some courage sometimes because I've been the person sitting at the table and like, do I say it? And it,
Yeah. There's a, you know, there's a fine line there between being the person who, when they speak, it's influential versus they speak so much that you become deaf to what they're saying. And so hopefully, I know this audience, this is the cream of the crop, right? This is the people who are engaged in this. So I think they're probably pretty good about having a good barometer for that. But it's, something to always keep in the back of your mind.
okay, Ashley, we are going to go into rapid fire because I know we are a little over your time. So we can wrap this up. And it's going to be peanut focused and leadership focused. But short answers only is what I will say. The most underrated way to eat peanuts.
Oh, bold.
I can agree with that. If your leadership style were a peanut product, what would it be and why?
A chocolate covered peanut.
Love
Um, Because, well, you said just short answer, so I won't go into explanation. Just chocolate covered
it. That's
peanut.
a good one. What is one question every leader should ask themselves before a tough conversation?
What is the outcome that I'm seeking? Like, why am I having this?
The biggest communication red flag is
Body language.
what is something you used to believe about conflict that you've now outgrown?
That my opinion is the opinion and the right one. Just being much more open minded.
Creamy or crunchy?
Oh, creamy.
Me too.
Fun fact though, North Carolina peanuts do not typically go into peanut butter.
Another man, I'm all full of fun facts after this podcast. I love it. Finish the sentence. If agriculture had more crucial conversations, we'd have fewer.
Misconceptions.
Good answer, Ashley. Okay, and our final little segment is called Hot Takes because at AFA we love hot takes. So, what is an unconventional or bold opinion you have about leadership, peanuts, or the future of agriculture?
I love that you sent me this ahead of time because I've got two, but I'm going to just pick one. So I came up in the industry where we were talking about this massive retirement we were going to lose all these people out of our industry and how we had to get more people who didn't know anything about agriculture excited about careers. I spent probably 3 years in my early career doing this whole career awareness of like, look at all these awesome jobs, come work in our industry. That is still important. But my like hot take is we weren't ready. We have not done, and I don't mean that I think there's been a ton of work around inclusivity, DEI, et cetera, in the industry, but there ain't no Ag 101. We are bringing all these people into the fold, and good for us because we need them. But we need to help them. And I mean, I've really seen this since I came into the peanut industry because, again, we could do a whole podcast on all the layers and how the peanut industry works because the majority of people don't know it. And I'm not saying that we need to teach people beef marketing, swine marketing, like the flow chart, right? Of every single commodity, but we need to do more, those of us who are in this industry, to understand, yes, we're bringing in people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand the flow chart of things. And we need to help educate them so that they can be more powerful. When they bring the diversity that they're bringing, they've got some foundational knowledge. So I hope, while I'm doing a little bit of that in the peanut industry, but it's obviously specific to my industry, I hope to see the day when across the board there's more of that Ag 101 foundation for the people that we're bringing into our industry, because we're going to have them. And I'm so glad they've come. I hope they continue to come.
Love that hot take. It's great.
Yeah, it's a little different, but I also really enjoyed the most recent of your podcast that I listened to, the lady who said, there's a lot of people, we talk a lot about consumers not understanding where their food comes from.
Yeah, but
And
farmers not understanding where their food goes. Loved that take from Michelle as
I,
well.
I know, I was like, girl, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And so it's been on my mind ever since I listened to that. And I was like, that's kind of like my Ag 101 thing. I mean, it's different, but yeah, we just need to do more to help these people because, gosh, it will only, knowledge is power. It will only make them more powerful in our businesses.
Yes, and make our industry stronger. Absolutely. Ashley, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for the conversation today. At AFA, we're all about building bridges. So, where can people learn more about you, connect with you, and the work that you are doing with the Peanut Growers Association?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Ashley Collins. More importantly, across Facebook, Instagram, you can find NC Peanuts. And I think, do a phenomenal job of putting out information about North Carolina peanuts and just the peanut industry in general. And our website is aboutpeanuts.com. And that's a brand new website we just launched, and it's got a lot of great information on there. And you can find my email. And happy to have a conversation with anyone who would like to talk a little more.
Love that. Well, I'm about to go follow NC Peanuts because I'm sure there's more fun facts that I will get to learn.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us, Ashley. This has been a wonderful conversation that I know I learned from, and I'm sure our listeners did too. So we really appreciate you being on the Cultivating Leaders podcast. Thanks for listening to the Cultivating Leaders podcast brought to you by Agriculture Future of America. If you've been here before, you know we value feedback as a gift. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.